Welcome to the East Angle, a podcast about the East, broadly defined, exploring international relations, politics, and history. When time allows, we will also delve into world events and our shared passion for football. I'm Ra Mason, and this is my co-host, Sherzod Muminov.
Hello and welcome to the May episode of the East Angle podcast. Today we have a very unusual setting and very interesting guests, and Ra will introduce them to us.
Thank you, Sherzod. We are here indeed on the Unthank Road, this fabulous part of Norwich, to introduce two very special guests, George and Barbara Hyde. George is Professor of Translation Studies, and Barbara has only recently retired from the University of East Anglia. So we'd like to talk to them about their amazing life experiences and their connections to Japan. Welcome to the East Angle.
Ra, don't forget you are the guests. Yes, Barbara and George are hosts, are guests on the podcast, but you and I are guests in their house. So it did feel a little bit strange when you said welcome. Okay, so can I first start by asking you about your connection to Japan? Because both of you have worked in Japan, both of you have learned Japanese. Where did it all start? I mean, obviously you should speak for individually for yourself, or maybe collectively if it was a collective experience. But really, why did you become interested in Japan in the first place?
Well, the first thing was pictorial, and that went on for some while, I think, and still does continue, as you can see by looking around this room.
Yes.
I had a very good friend who was a poet writing actually in Israel, and he wrote in Hebrew, but he was a great collector of every conceivable beautiful thing, including pictures. And he introduced me to the ukiyo-e, which he was very fond of. So I went with him to little shops in London and bought a few things, some of which are here in front of you now.
Yes, amazing.
So that's where it all started.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. What about you, Barbara?
Yeah, I can't say I really had that particular connection or interest. I mean, obviously I liked the pictures, but no, it only started sort of unexpectedly after George was offered the work there, and I wanted to go too, but I didn't really know anything about Japan at that time.
And how sorry, go ahead, George.
No, I knew very little myself also, and found out much later really. But yeah, I agree with you that Japan was not in our focus actually at the time, until suddenly in my Lawrence seminar a Japanese professor appeared. I didn't know he was coming, actually, I really didn't. And he said to me, at one point after we'd been drinking together, he said, "Why were you so cold to me?" And I said, "Sorry, I didn't mean to be. I was just very busy. But now that I know you, everything's changed." And he sat through all my classes on Lawrence. He said, "Don't ask me any questions." So I didn't ask him any questions. But at the end of the seminar, after 12, 13 weeks, he said, "How would you like to work in Japan?" It never occurred to me, actually. And I said, "Well, it's quite interesting. What do you have in mind?" He said, "Well, Professor, what was his name? A professor in the Kyoto Women's University. Kato. Professor Kato needs a professor of English in Kyoto Women's University. Would you like to go and live in Kyoto for a bit?" And I said, "Well, I have heard of Kyoto. Looks very nice to me. Why not?"
Oh, how would I have loved to erase my memory and go to Kyoto for the first time as someone who doesn't know anything about Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. How did you find that early experience of being in Japan?
Well, of course, the first experience was in Osaka.
Which year are we talking about?
You were in Osaka in 1997 in the summer. That was before he started working there.
A very hot summer experience in Osaka. And I went there to do some research, and I couldn't do much at all. Hardly did anything except shopping and lying in a cold bath because the summer was extreme. I hadn't expected that really. I had heard of Japan before because when I graduated from Cambridge back in 1962 and I was looking for a job, the British Council offered me a job in Hiroshima. But then I read the classified information, you know, when they're looking to appoint somebody, they have to give them all this rather frightening information about the country. And a lot of it looked very negative, but they also said the climate is extremely difficult. And books grow mildew.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm not going to go there and have my books covered in mildew. Because I rather treasure my books, you know.
Yes, absolutely. And subsequently, Barbara, you did also work for the British Council, is that right? But not in Japan?
No, that was before.
Well, that was before?
Yes. I had just finished my last contract with them in October '97.
Right, but so you finished with that, and then you went out to Japan and had a sort of very different experience, would you say, or something very similar, or do you think you share the experiences, or did you have a very kind of divergent path once you were out in Japan?
No, not divergent at all. No, it was really nice to do something together that was new for both of us, because I'd been away in Eastern Europe for nearly 6 years.
Right.
So it was good to do something new and exciting for both of us. When we both had work, and we arrived in the spring of '98, because obviously the academic year begins in April, doesn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So we arrived in March, and we just couldn't believe how full the buses were in Kyoto. My God, no one had told us about the cherry blossom season.
They were all tourists, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the buses weren't like that later. But, you know, they were absolutely packed, and they never stopped anyone getting on. So it was completely packed. They still stopped at the next stop, and people got on. We just couldn't understand that. So that was one of the really strange things, wasn't it, George, at first?
Yes, it was.
Plus the fact that while we were looking for somewhere to live, because they didn't find anywhere for us, you know, we had to find
I thought they'd find us a place to live, but they didn't.
But they put us in the alumni hostel of Kyoto Women's University.
Right.
Which was okay.
Which was a weird place.
It was a weird place. But also we had to move out every
Thursday we had to move out.
Every Thursday.
That is weird.
Go somewhere else. They just said, go somewhere else.
We found a hotel.
And I said, where am I going to go? And they said, lots of hotels. So I went down Kawaramachi and I found a little business hotel, whatever they called it, I don't know.
Business hotel, yeah.
Well, it was tiny and there was nothing much in there except television and a lot of pornographic films. I thought, well,
sounds
this is
more like Love Hotel than a business hotel.
No, it was just an ordinary hotel, but I thought this is a different side of Japan, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get back to the alumni hostel. It had communal baths right at the bottom, you know, in the basement, but they were unisex. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
So when George and I went there, we just locked the door because I didn't want strange men coming having a bath. But we heard them outside, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, they were cross.
They were cross, yes.
Wow, that's
amazing
that's
experience.
amazing, because these days those unisex baths are pretty much gone, aren't they?
Really?
Maybe in some villages, maybe, but it's not a thing these days.
It was really lovely there. It was so hot and big and just
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I mean, mixed in the sense that mixed genders or mixed sexes, but within one gender, it's still quite common. So you would go to a man's bath, and everybody just walks around naked and uses the same pool. Ra has a story about it. Well, he's not going to tell it maybe today. Maybe he will. I don't know. So the amazing experiences in Japan that you're telling already. We had only a few minutes.
This is true, but it was, to me, life was so much easier than in other places that I'd been.
It is.
Because,
it still is. Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, everything worked.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to open any doors. You just stood in front of them and they opened automatically. And I just thought, this is the place for me. And that's partly because I had been working before for the British Council in Poland. Poland was under great pressure and stress at the time.
In communist times.
Yeah.
This was the communist period.
I would imagine, yes.
They were trying to make sense of the communist ideology which had been imposed on them, and it didn't work, and they didn't know why it didn't work, and there was some degree of confusion and anxiety about it all. I mean, I loved the Poles, and they're so creative. They had tremendous theatre, like I'd never seen before in my life. I wrote quite a lot about Polish theatre when I was living there, but it was a tough experience, really, and there were shortages of everything. There were times where you went to a shop and there was nothing. except a packet of biscuits, maybe. You know. And I remember you went to the shop and said, "Have you got one of those? What was that? Have you got this?" Then you learnt the phrase that you used over and again. Have you got something similar?
Sospot of negro.
Yes, sospot of negro. I still remember that phrase, vivid phrase. If you haven't got that, you've got something like it.
Right, yeah.
But I can't describe the shortages like wartime. You know.
That's basically my childhood.
And then there was what they called the Stanway, state of war, when Jaruzelski took over in Poland, before they managed to resolve all this, and before Solidarity got the answers.
So you're talking about 1970s?
Yeah.
Even in the 70s there were shortages?
76 to 79.
Very much
Okay.
so, because the meat went to Russia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you wanted meat, you had to join a long queue.
Yeah.
Well, we were in Lublin, which was a sort of low class. I mean, they're all classified as Polish cities, and there were lots of workers. They kept them happy by feeding them and supplying them with vodka.
But when we arrived,
Vodka
they said,
was the
"Where's
most
your
important
grandmother?" Because if you were an old person, you could go to the front of the queue.
Oh yeah.
We couldn't.
Yeah. I mean, this sounds familiar to me, but I remember the late 80s. So the late days of last years of Soviet Union, when I was a child, and we had similar long queues for everything. But even in the 70s, then the Poles had those kind of issues.
Oh yes. And so,
Was it very different country to country? Because you've had amazing experiences in multiple Eastern European countries, for example. So was it the case that, I don't know, in Lithuania, it was, you know, far less of these shortages compared to Hungary, compared to Poland, or was it the same kinds of issues across
Each country's very different. And anyway, when I was in the British Council work was post-communist.
Ah, right, okay.
But I had worked in communist Hungary before, much earlier, before we married, in fact.
Hungary was different because it was an agricultural country.
It's very different. I mean, Poland was more free, really. People were more irreverent, you know. They didn't give a damn. But Hungary
There was
was
nothing
stricter.
like the degree of censorship.
Hungary is much stricter. You couldn't have got a job as a literature lecturer.
No, and
in Hungary.
there was no comparable avant-garde theatre in Hungary.
No, it was tougher in Hungary. Actually.
Tougher.
I mean, for people, I wasn't
We
there
actually
long.
bought a house there. I got made good friends there, and
Yeah, that was post-communist.
that was post-communist.
Right. But then in your experience in Japan, from what you're saying...
Everything was available.
Right,
and
right.
I said to my friend Tetsuhiko, "It's amazingly consumerist." I said, "But you consume such nice things."
Yes, Japan is a consumerist heaven. Well, how about the the freedom question? I'm not in any way suggesting Japan was less free than, or at least less free than other countries, but what about some of the, let's say, social constraints that you face in Japan as a foreigner? When you first go to Japan, you feel that certain rules, I mean, some people at least, I mean, some rules for me were suffocating. Some people feel that some of the expectations, some of the ways in which people actually interact, or some of the things that you say and do are quite too, prescriptive, too suffocating. Did you feel any of that in the 70s Japan?
Not much of it, no. I mean, I had graduate students, it was a women's university.
70s Japan, no.
So it was the 90s by the time that you were there, wasn't it?
Yeah,
but still,
90s.
yeah.
Well, I'm talking about the social side of things, not political, because yes, you mentioned Eastern Europe, Poland and Hungary. They would have been politically constrained. People would have been careful,
They were complex, very
etc.
complex.
And we know the reasons for that.
Yeah.
I'm in case of Japan. I'm asking about your personal experience as a foreigner in all of those countries. If you could compare, how did you find the social side of things in Japan? So the social norms, the need to fit in or not to fit in, the ability to order things if you're Japanese, how good, depending on how good your Japanese was at the time. Did you feel in any way, because you're talking about the consumerist side of things, and it is really convenient and things work, but on the other hand, if you're a foreigner who doesn't speak Japanese, life can be actually quite constraining in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have very cordial relations with many of my colleagues. The chap I got on best with the women's university was actually Australian, but he had a Japanese wife. He left her behind in Australia. I think that that was a general experience. He said to me that, they just don't want to know us in a way.
Well, it was a language problem in particular because we didn't speak Japanese, and we couldn't really have. We had a few Japanese friends, but they were people who could speak English. We had very good Japanese friends, and we did a lot with them.
Yeah, but I had very cordial relations with the students, and nobody stopped me or said this is not appropriate or something. I was only told off for other things altogether, talking about some Japanese institutions and history with being not careful enough.
I'd love to hear about those times when you were told off. Again, only if you're comfortable.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
But you see, when I took over the job in Kyoto Women's University, the chap before me had just drunk himself to death.
Oh.
And I thought, well, I'd better not go down that road. But I wondered what the problem was. And I was given a list of books, a reading list, for the students, including lots and lots of short stories and essays in English. And I realised after a week or two, they couldn't begin to read those things. They hadn't got the basic knowledge of English, to read set books. I thought, what am I going to do about that? And I found the answer. The answer was to show them movies, because the Japanese, who I just rediscovered with our friend here, have a wonderful visual sense. They notice visual details of things that sometimes we don't, And we were watching a film about D.H. Lawrence, and it showed how his book, Lady Chatterley's Lover, his very controversial book, was published by a small press in Florence. Peter Orioli, his name was. He did a wonderful job. I've got something similar. There's a hardback red book with a white label, very conspicuous. It stands out very much. And I got another book from the same press with the same red cover and the same white label. And as soon as you saw that, you said, I've seen that before. She recognised the thing from the film. And so what actually happened was, I said, right, I'm going to teach now a unit designed especially for Japanese students, and it's called Japanese Culture Under Western Eyes. And so I got lots of film material where somehow or other the woodblock prints or the Japanese movies or Japanese stories have been subjected to some kind of European interpretation. And that worked a treat, it really did.
Amazing.
The students had never looked at their own culture. I showed Seven Samurai. I thought that if you were Japanese, you must realise that it's a wonderful film.
Even if you're not Japanese.
Well, if you're not Japanese, it's not a problem.
Yes.
But I thought a Japanese must just grow up with something like that.
Yeah.
But of course it's not true at all.
Yeah.
It's old-fashioned now, and but they enjoyed it enormously.
But they study it in cinema schools to this day. They study the art of composition.
Sure.
Looking at Seven
if you
Samurai.
go to a cinema school.
But George's students hadn't.
I can understand that. I guess
never even thought about it.
these days, even less, I guess, young people would probably not watch anything which is black and white.
Yeah.
Or which is longer than 15 minutes, I guess. Something like that.
Maybe they will just watch this podcast.
Well, I hope so.
But I remember you said that the language of Seven Samurai was quite tricky. It's not quite natural modern Japanese, is it?
Because it's Jidaigeki, it's a period drama, I guess.
Yeah, right. So I would also be curious to ask, if you don't mind me asking Barbara, how did you find the experience as a woman? Because my mother, for example, when she visited Japan, was very kind of not off-put. She really enjoyed her experiences in Japan, but she was very conscious of the fact that she seemed to be treated differently as a woman than she would be in Britain or a European country. Did you find that?
I wonder what particular examples she...
I think she was thinking of things like just there's a certain kind of, not hierarchy, but there's a certain sense in which Japanese culture does still have a male dominance.
Yes.
And she felt that coming through the culture, coming through the way people, I don't know, perhaps talk to my father first before they talked to her, or the way that she was addressed, or the way things were organised in society, felt that there was a kind of advantage to males.
I don't think I really felt that, perhaps because we weren't in situations where that would have come up.
Right, okay.
And as a teacher at Ritsumeikan, it was just normal to be, there were men and women teachers. I didn't feel any kind of difference really at all.
There was no disconcertion?
No, I was aware that was the case in Japanese society, but we felt we were outside Japanese society, so I don't really feel the difference was more being a foreigner.
Yes.
Being non-Japanese, that was a very obvious difference, and people obviously treated me very differently, but not because I was a woman, I don't think. No.
And in terms of that experience then as a foreigner, what were the things that really stood out to you as ways that made you feel different, or things that kind of challenged you because you were there as a foreigner?
Obviously, as a teacher of English, speaking English,
Yes.
that was just horrifying for the students when they first heard me open my mouth. Partly because, I was speaking natural English.
Yeah.
And also because it wasn't American English. They were much more familiar with American English. So it took a long time for me. It was a huge, steep learning curve to know how to teach a class of 40 students who didn't really want to speak and didn't understand what I was saying.
Yeah.
But I did. I learnt a lot.
Right.
And quite a funny thing happened, actually. After I'd been there quite a short time, I just wanted to write about it. So I wrote a short article for a paper. It's called EFL Gazette. I don't know if it still exists. It was just
English as a Foreign Language Gazette, or EFL. Yeah.
EFL,
Okay.
Yeah. It was just a newspaper format, and I published this short article just saying how difficult it was to teach in these circumstances. I wasn't kind of running down the Japanese students in any way. I was just saying, for me, who was new to it, how difficult it was, and what the challenges were. And a Japanese student in England read this and wrote a very angry letter.
Wow.
It's like, how dare she say these things about us? And I think she had misunderstood, because I hadn't been running down the students and saying they were bad students. I was simply saying, what the
cultural
were.
differences,
Cultural
differences.
and educational differences that were at that stage new for me. And it just took me a while to learn how to do it. And I had help from other, English or American colleagues. I had lots of advice and everything. And I gradually learned what kind of thing to do and what not to do.
Yes.
And then it became easier.
It does surprise even me. When I was a graduate student, I was a teaching assistant. And one day the professor went to Tokyo for a conference, and he said, "You need to take care of my lecture." He gave me all the lecture notes, he gave me all the slides. But I wanted to make it interactive. That's how I teach. I don't want to just give it to the students.
Absolutely.
I want to interact, even if it's a lecture.
Yeah.
And I remember my shock when it was a room of 80, and I asked the question, and not a single student actually ventured to answer. Obviously, then you get used to it. Then you know that maybe you shouldn't push students. And one of the students, who was kind of very honest, he rescued me out of this very tricky situation. When I was asking question after question, nobody was even lifting their head. And one of the students said, "Please don't be offended. We know the answer to your question, but a lot of people will just not speak up. It's just not good to speak up." And I understood. And that was, at the time, it was just my first few months in Japan, and my Japanese was almost non-existent at the time.
Yes.
So it is just a different learning and teaching culture.
Exactly, it is.
Very much so.
Yeah. It takes time to get used to it. I mean, for example, you need to know their names. If you name a person, that person might be a bit sort of horrified, but at least they might answer you.
Yeah.
But also with language teaching, it's so much more important to be interactive,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not telling them a content, I'm getting them to use English.
How else would you learn if you don't speak it? I guess, yeah.
So I did an awful lot of group work, where they would talk to each other, and I'd walk around and make sure they were speaking English to each other. I mean, they did in small groups. Yeah.
How do you think that your experiences in Japan have shaped your life since then? Because looking around this beautiful house, it's obvious. Even the coaster here is an Ichiban.
Yeah, show it to the camera, maybe. Kirin Ichiban.
You can see that. So we've got a Kirin Ichiban coaster, and there's lots of evidence of beautiful Japanese things here. So how do you feel about your connection to Japan now, and how it might shape your life?
In sort of a small way, I started doing pottery in Japan, and I'm a potter now, well, amateur potter, and I think some kind of Japanese influence has persisted in my pottery.
Yeah.
A little bit. It was, it was good to learn there.
Did you learn Did you start learning it in Japan?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's really amazing. And these woodblock prints that you have, they are absolutely amazing. And again, they tell the story not for me as a historian. They are historic things. Obviously, they're also beautiful works of art. And as Ra mentioned, Japan has left an imprint in your lives, not just in the sense of what you have in the house, but also in the way that you do pottery, and you still think about Japan. And I think, George, you're learning Japanese.
I'm going back to it now, yes.
Okay, so I just want to ask you about the language, because we foreign Japanese studies people, or academics or not, again, we love it, but we also complain. I do complain a lot. I sometimes I hear academics say, "Oh, Japanese is such an evil language," and what they mean is, they don't necessarily just mean it in a very bad way, but for example, when you have a character that has 3 readings,
Yeah.
and depending on which word it is in, it's read differently, and you need to remember all of those things. And even basic things like when you're reading, there are no capital letters, the words aren't separated, and sometimes that can create a problem. All of those things, especially if you're dealing with it on a daily basis, it does annoy me sometimes. I love it. I love kanji, the characters. Having learned it for a few years, it still annoys me. So I wonder how you decide. First of all, I admire your bravery and admire your persistence in going back to it. What has your experience been with Japanese? And then maybe Barbara can also tell us a little bit about
I found it difficult, particularly because there aren't many good course books. There aren't many books, and there certainly aren't any books which will help you to teach yourself Japanese. It's a funny thing, but I think that, in Japan, perhaps you know something or you don't know it, but there's nothing in between. There's no sort of intermediate stage where you're working up towards a good working knowledge of something.
Yes.
And I don't know what it is. It's something in the mentality, I think. But I wouldn't like to generalise about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also an experience that probably we've all had, where in Japanese in particular, you can't get things wrong.
That's right.
Whereas in English or even in Spanish or other kind of languages, you can use pidgin words and people will sort of accept it. In Japan, if you don't get it spot on, usually it will not be enough, right? I think people find that very challenging.
I think that's true.
Yeah, we heard stories about people who spoke good Japanese, speaking Japanese to a Japanese person, and the Japanese person would say, "I'm sorry, I don't speak English."
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, it's wonderful. I think I understand. I think briefly, if I think about it, I understand that even the script, the fact that the script is so difficult that you never stop learning it, makes life difficult. Especially if you're a foreigner, but also for the Japanese people. But I mean, I sometimes think how easy it would have been to just have I don't know, Romanized Japanese. And in the immediate instant, I say no, that wouldn't work, because if you know Japanese, it's a language of homonyms. It's a language that it would be impossible to understand Japanese if it was all written in Roman letters. So I guess we have to live with it. We have to live with the difficulty.
Is it true that after the war, the Americans wanted to get rid of the language?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think. I think it's probably just one of those myths. There was, however, in the Meiji period, there were some suggestions that Japan should switch to Latin Roman letters.
Yes, I've heard
so
that.
there was even a very progressive education minister called Mori Arinori. He would be assassinated by a nationalist, actually. Mori was quite fond of Europeanization, Anglicization of Japanese. And he himself wasn't against the idea of actually Romanizing Japanese, because he thought that would help Japan integrate with the world more easily. He felt that it would make life easier, communication easier. He was one of those radical westernizers like Fukuzawa Yukichi, the guy who banned bowing in Keio University, which he founded. He absolutely banned people from bowing because he believed that Japan should leave these evil customs of the past. It should leave it all behind and face to the West. He was also racist. You should read, or maybe you shouldn't, what he wrote about Chinese and Korean people, because he felt that Asia was backward. Asia is something that we need to leave. Datsuaron, we have to leave. Anyway, don't let me turn it into a history lecture.
Why don't we leave Asia just for a moment and take a very short break, and then we'll come back and hear from Barbara and George about their current life and plans for the future. Okay, so welcome back, and we would like in this final part of this special edition, I think, to ask George and Barbara about their current life and experiences. And we know, for example, that you've done amazing work in Eastern Europe, and as I understand it, you currently have a couple from Ukraine living here with you, which is a fantastic sort of, I guess, expression of goodwill and friendship. How did that come to happen, and how do you feel about the world now and the environment we live in?
Goodness, very big question.
Sorry, a huge question.
Well, about the Ukrainians, yes, that was chance. You know, a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing.
Pure chance.
A friend here knew that we had that room. In fact, it was let to somebody else, but he was an absent lodger
Right.
who just left a huge mess there. And we heard that this Ukrainian couple who were living in North Norfolk wanted to move to Norwich to have more chance of finding work and so on and improving their English. It kind of didn't work out like that for them really, but anyway, it was a chance to kind of get Jake, the former lodger, to come and clear his stuff out and just redecorate the room and that kind of thing. And so they came and they liked it and they helped as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they didn't look for work in Norwich and they went back to a job they'd been doing in North Norfolk.
Oh, okay.
Which is, I think it was just because it was easy, you know, they didn't have to, yeah, it was easy, they'd been doing it. They knew the people there. It was in a hotel.
Yeah.
So they're still doing that.
Right. But this is obviously something you've done for some time in terms of welcoming people into your home and kind of, I guess, not just locally but also internationally. Is that something that you feel quite passionate about, or do you just see it as a natural part of your life? Or
What do you think, George?
I don't think I feel passionate about it, but I just feel a bit sorry for them. I mean, Ukraine is not in the news even anymore. And
People have kind of forgotten a little bit.
and the Russians just keep attacking and attacking. I was always deeply interested and concerned with Russian culture and Russian literature and music and everything, and art. But all of the Russianists that I know are in some kind of confusion about this state of affairs, because Russia is not now something that is very desirable to know about. And I've tried to learn a bit of Ukrainian. It's very close to Russian. It's too close, I think, for comfort, really. And so I did manage to read a poem the other day by the Ukrainian poet Shevchenko, a poem about in honor of Gogol. Gogol was, of course, Ukrainian anyway, but he just happened to write in Russian.
Yes.
He wrote very little in Ukrainian, then switched to Russian for obvious reasons.
Yeah, unfortunately, the current war has,
it's
withdrawn
messed
those
up.
borders because,
Terrible
there are so many people. We recently at the UEA we had Andrei Kurkov, who is a Ukrainian author. Death and the Penguin. That's the only one I've read, but he's now published another one, and he said, and he was asked this question about Russian language, which for him is mother tongue.
Yes.
He said, "This is my mother tongue," but he also called it the language of the enemy. So this reality, it creates these weird divisions and unfortunate divisions, in the sense that yes, Gogol is another example of a Ukrainian-born person who wrote in Russian, and it's also unfortunate, and it's.
But it depends on the circumstances. I mean, perhaps Ukrainians don't want to use Russian, but our older son, lives in Estonia and is a Russian speaker and an Estonian speaker, and many refugees have gone there, and he has been helping with Ukrainian refugees there. And of course, it's good for them that they can communicate with people who know Russian.
I think it's person-to-person basis. Yes, because I don't know, people have different opinions on this. I think that Russian language can be a bridge, and even though Russia itself, you might disagree with Russia's actions, I might disagree with the actions of the British government. That doesn't stop me from speaking and using English in the same vein. But I also respect people who don't want to use. So I have met Ukrainians who, and I don't venture any longer speaking Russian to Ukrainians because some people are uncomfortable. So we switch to English. But some people will actually, when they learn, oh, you're Uzbek, and then they switch to Russian themselves.
Right.
So it depends, I think, on the people.
Yes.
So when Kurkov came, when I was introduced by Francis, my colleague who organized it all, I didn't speak Russian to him, although I know I read his books in Russian,
Yes.
because I didn't know how he would react. But then in the end, he said we spoke Russian. So unfortunately, war makes us reconsider all of these things. But I really hate the fact that war touches or influences culture so much, or intercultural communication so much, and it destroys so many things, and it's so unfortunate.
Yep.
Do you see language and the arts as a bridge to overcome that? I mean, you're both very deeply involved and have taught language. Do you think it's a powerful tool in bridging those divisions?
Yes.
Yes, I think it is.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
And my Russian friend who's teaching Russian at the university thinks that she's doing some good by letting people get to know what Russian culture really means.
Mm. Yeah, it's the culture of Dostoevsky, culture of Tchaikovsky.
Oh my God,
you know?
yes. I mean, it's immensely rich.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about your experiences, Barbara, teaching English as a foreign language? Have you watched kind of different nationalities and divisions come together as a result of that? Friendships form that perhaps never would have done?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. For example, a class might have some Japanese and some Chinese students in it, and they naturally kind of talk to each other. Yeah, it's great. It's great to have classes that are very mixed, and English becomes the way they communicate, and that's a good way for them to improve their English too, of course. Yeah. That's good.
And so in that sense, do you have a thought about, or for both of you really, about how learning might develop in the future? We talk a lot about what is going to be the next phase of universities, what's going to happen in the higher education sector. Do you have a kind of vision for the future of how you think it might best go? Or is it all doom and gloom?
Well, it's not doom and gloom, it's just that I feel it's no longer something that I'm connected with, you know? It's too late for me, really. I mean, I was using technology to some extent when I was still teaching, smart boards and whatever, but I don't really know about the future. I mean, obviously there are complications with plagiarism and so on, but
AI,
with AI, but that was happening anyway. I mean,
Right.
people were plagiarizing before.
This is what I tell my students. I tell them, look, if AI writes your essay, it's exactly like somebody else, a human writing your essay. It's still plagiarism. It's still, although I mean, Ryan and I, we talk about this a lot. AI has actually exceeded a lot of people's expectations, or a lot of people's understanding even what artificial intelligence or programs can do.
Particularly in translation studies. Right? I'd be curious to ask you, George, do you see AI as a complete game changer, or do you think there will always be a role for translators?
There's always a role for translators. And you can just show that, demonstrate it very easily by looking at the quality of AI translation. It's so poor. I mean, I'll translate anything for you online if you want, but if there's any subtlety in it or anything complicated in it, you can forget it. You've got to rethink it entirely. And as a literary translator, I have to keep rewriting texts. There's no other way. You can't just take the words and situate them in a new language. You've got to really rethink and re-experience. It's the experiential dimension.
It's creative.
So are you saying that you have to be a human to feel literature?
Yeah.
You have to have had experiences.
Yeah, I am saying that.
No, it doesn't.
AI is very useful. I mean, we're all using it to some extent, aren't we?
It has our experiences.
Yeah.
Millions of our experiences stored somewhere, which it can go through very quickly. But obviously, it cannot feel, touch, see. It sees through cameras, but it doesn't really see, does it?
No, that's quite true.
Yeah.
And I think I can feel things as a Pole after living in Poland, and as a Russian after, I spent a lot of time in the Soviet Union. And even as a Hungarian sometimes, I feel the world. Phrases come to mind. Hungarian is a very colourful language, very vivid. And the phrase comes up, and I find it very appropriate, for certain contexts. But it's with AI, you've lost all that.
Can I ask two questions, or maybe one question about two languages or two cultures from your experiences, using my kind of interest in history? Because I'm really interested in how things, or maybe how your experiences were in Japan and the Soviet Union of the time. if we say think about 1970s or 1990s, either of those decades is really interesting. For example, in Japan, 1970s was a very confident decade. Not as confident as the 80s, but Japan was already the second largest economy in the world. You know, everybody was talking in the 1970s. People were saying Japan is going to be number one. Whereas Soviet Union also 70s was also quite confident, but then that was basically the last good decade for the Soviet Union.
Yes.
So I'm really curious about maybe if you could share one or two things about each country that really struck you or stayed with you about those countries, just as an eyewitness.
Somebody in Japan said to me once that Japan is what the Soviet Union would have become if the system had worked. There's some truth in that, and that's a really silly thing to say, but there's some truth in it. And it's just the inefficiency. Russia is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. And, well, you represent something in Russia which is non-Russian.
Yeah.
But it's also part of their experience, their historical experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, how do you come to terms with that? You've got to be able to master lots of different languages, dialects probably, as well, and geographical variants.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And what about Japan in the 70s?
Well, I can't speak with any authority about Japan. All I know is that it's difficult. I keep forgetting it, and I have to keep reminding myself, even of katakana and hiragana, because it slips out of my memory. And but when I haven't been there for a while now, but when I was there, I felt completely at home, just because everything is for people.
Yes, it's convenient. Everything works.
It's not just convenient. It's human. It's not a matter of just convenience. Certainly technologically, of course, it's very advanced. But
what do you mean then? If it's not convenience of things that work, of trains that run on time?
Those things are wonderful. But I just found the way that people are interrelated.
People, the society.
Yes.
More welcoming? Or more attentive? More what?
Respectful.
Respectful,
yes.
Yes.
That is very important.
But not in a distant way, somehow.
And trying to think of what the other person is feeling and thinking.
So considerate.
Yes, considerate.
Consideration is a good word, yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be in a massive crowd at a festival or something, and you never felt like threatened or you never felt being pushed by people or anything like that.
I still remember that fire festival near Kyoto, where everything was ablaze, and there was masses of people. A lot of them been drinking quite a lot as well. They would have been a very disorderly crowd. In India, someone would have been killed. But there, I felt completely safe.
Right.
I complain a lot to Ra, usually about this country. For example, when I say consider, obviously it's little things, and I shouldn't really make a big thing out of it. But you're running in the street, and you're running on a very narrow pavement, and there will be one or two people walking, and somehow they have to walk shoulder to shoulder, and they never look back and they never consider, I mean most people in this, not everybody, they never think that somebody else might be trying to also walk on this pavement or maybe run on this pavement, and they now have to step on the road and endanger themselves. And the number of times that happens when I'm on a run is just countless. Whereas in Japan, I really can't imagine something like that, because in Japan people will always kind of keep an eye on things. I don't know how they...
Except for the cyclists in Kyoto.
Cyclists, yes. Well,
Kyoto, very good exception. Yes.
Kyoto is a very different place because of the number of people.
Yes.
I think if you ask me, and Cambridge also, I say the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
The only bad thing about Cambridge and Kyoto is the tourists. I'm sorry, I am myself sometimes tourist, but the reason why, you just told us that even in the 90s those buses were packed in Kyoto. And every time I'm in Kyoto, I face that problem, that there's just the transport system is just overloaded.
Yeah.
Maybe our friends at Ritsumeikan can tell us why, or if it always happens, but
they are just changing the policy. So last month they have just introduced that they are changing the tourist policy on buses in Kyoto.
In what
how?
way?
What are they doing?
So they are going to introduce a 2-tier fare system.
Okay.
So if you're a Kyoto resident, you will be able to ride the buses for a massively reduced amount versus tourists that will pay a premium. And that's to partly to compensate the residents that have suffered, long-suffering residents with these crowded buses.
If you ask me, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, although...
That's fair.
Okay.
So, one last question for both of you, if you don't mind me asking. It's a bit of a left field question, but I have to ask, seeing as you spent time in Japan. What is your favourite Japanese food and why?
You've got more favourite ones than I have.
Maybe top 3 then.
Well, I like so much of it. And our good
Just
friend
let's
here
list them then.
is actually preparing it for me.
Wow, amazing.
But I love natto.
Natto.
Wow.
Now, that's a very strange thing to say, probably. But I especially like it the way that she makes it. I love soba.
Okay. Cold, hot, all kinds?
Hot, and with dipping.
Oh, yeah.
Dipping
To
sauce.
you, yeah.
And okonomiyaki.
Okay.
Okonomiyaki. Okay,
Yeah.
that's one of my favourites, definitely.
Yes. And
So good.
you made it even the other day.
Yeah, it wasn't the first.
It's probably also one of the easiest to cook, if you can get the sauces.
Yeah, well, I suppose so. But when I came back from Japan, I used to do a lot of cooking, and I just cooked everything in kombudashi. And that is such a Japanese taste.
Yeah.
And it's very healthy and very good for you.
That umami.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, yeah.
On that mouth-watering note, then, I think we should probably wrap up. Say a huge thank you to our 2 guests, Barbara and George Hyde. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
To our guests and hosts at the same time, because we are recording this in their beautiful house. Thank you, George. Thank you, Barbara, for
Our
amazing
pleasure.
stories, and all the best to you. And good luck in the Japanese language, in learning the Japanese
Thank you. I
language.
need more than that, but thank you.
Thank you.
So thanks to all our watchers, listeners, likers, subscribers as well, and we will hopefully see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.
See you in the next one.
This podcast has been produced with support from the Faculty of Arts and Humanities at the University of East Anglia, UEA. The hosts are grateful to the UEA Media Production team. Technical assistance has been kindly provided by the technicians at the UEA Media Suite, who have also engineered and edited this episode. The views expressed in this podcast belong solely to those who express them and do not represent the views of the university or its affiliates.